Hey, sports card fans, welcome back to another episode of Two Guys, One Hobby with Don and John. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John. How about yourself, buddy?
Very well, very well. That the Rangers have made the World Series. Hopefully, the Diamondbacks. I'm a big supporter of the Diamondbacks. Not so much a big supporter of the Diamondbacks, but don't want the Phillies to be in. But anyway,
I have a hard time rooting for anything Philadelphia myself.
Yeah. All right, so we're on the same page.
And I got to
I'm
misfit for Diamondbacks fan, so I got to support him.
Yep. Oh, that is true. Yes. So I'm Texas, at least for now, Texas Rangers all the way. Now, the last guest that we had, Scott Reindeer Studios, you had pointed out, and I had missed it, that he was the first guest to be a member of the YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame.
From my selections. You had Ray from Philly on before that.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's right. We did have two. Sorry, Ray, didn't mean to forget you there. Right. So we had two. Well, I felt the need to up the game a little bit since we're now getting big time. You know, we've had our second Sports Card YouTube Hall of Famer on. Not only is our guest also a member of the YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame, he is the current commissioner. And he has an amazing vintage collection, autograph collection. And why I wanted to bring him on is, and I'll have him talk about his collection and his philosophy and in collecting and so on. But some of us live in the world in terms of vintage cards that we buy graded cards, PSA, SGC, you name it. Well, Jake is old school, if you want to call it, traditionalist, if you want to call it. I'm sure he has some other names that he considers himself. But I think primarily every card, in his collection is ungraded.
That is not true.
That's okay. So he may
have some on that. I know he has some graded cards.
Okay, he may have a couple guilty pleasures off to the side in his collection.
Yeah.
But we'll bring him on here, and we're going to have what I'm dubbing the great debate in terms of collecting vintage sports cards, graded versus ungraded. So let's bring on Jake. Legends Never Die. Let's get him on the screen here. How you doing, Jake?
Wonderful, guys. It's a great honor to be on here with Donnie Livestream and Johnny Boggs up in the corner.
There we go.
Yep. As we were coordinating the recording of this, Jake has come up with a nickname for me, Johnny Boggs. So
we're gonna run with it.
I'll take that. Now, Jake, before we get on, and I didn't mention this when I invited you on, but I don't want this to turn into a platform for you to plead your case to become a member of the Misfits. So just to get that out of the way, you can say
you, buddy.
Oh, see, now Don, you're just rubbing it in a little bit there.
I'm totally rubbing it in.
I could feel the spite all the way from Pittsburgh, so it's fine.
But he has one of these shirts.
I do. I should have wore it, but
I know. Instead, you've got a turkey on or something. I don't know what you got going on there.
Baseballism, Plymouth Rock Gobblers.
Gotcha.
Nice. So, as I mentioned, Jake, we're going to have you on here for a very friendly debate and discussion regarding vintage. Primarily, we're all involved in vintage sports cards, graded or ungraded. So, but before we go into some of the pros and cons that we'll talk about here, maybe you can give just a little bit of a background on your collecting background, what you collect, your methodology of collecting, and things like that.
Sure. So I've been collecting since I was 9, which was perfectly the year 2000. So 23 years I've been collecting. I view my collection as a museum to the game, but not in the same way as a John Mangini goes about it, where he wants, one card from every set. The simplest way I can put mine into terms is I do vintage sets that range from 1933 to 1979. Your Goudies, your Bowmans, your play balls, your tops, your Redmans, double headers, a couple basketball sets in the 69, 70, and 70, 71. But I also do autographed baseballs. See those behind me? Bobbleheads, rookie cards, and autographs of all baseball Hall of Famers, all major milestone club members. So like 500 home run guys, 3,000 hit guys, perfect game pitchers, but also my Braves World Series winning teams, which sadly won't be 2023. But I did get to experience that in 21 and 95 when I was 4. But I do those things. And I also
won when I was 4 also.
Nice. We have that in common, Don. And I also do UNC basketball stuff. I'm a big Tar Heel basketball fan. But that's the easiest way for me to describe what I collect. Now, as far as vintage set goes, which is relevant to our topic tonight, is I'm a big binder guy. You can probably see it. I can turn it. That shelf over there, that's all my vintage sets there from 1933 on up through 1979. I like seeing them all at home, together in the binder. So I'm mostly a raw guy for that reason.
Yeah, and before you came on, before we started recording, Don, that was, I think, one of the points that you wanted to make for having ungraded cards in your collection or binder collections. And
it makes a lot of sense to me. We were kind of talking, John and I love graded cards, but I don't honestly get buying graded cards and putting in those binders that have to be this thick. Kind of like, again, if that's the way you collect, so be it. I'm not here to rip on you, but to me, I'm kind of like, that doesn't make sense. But if I'm going to put them in a binder, they would be raw. But for like my shelves, I didn't get graded cards to display on my shelves, but I think they present well that way.
But yeah. So Jake, as a primary set collector, so you're not doing when you say, just to be clear, when you say, hey, I'm going to collect the 1963 top set. You're collecting, you mean every card, not just the Hall of Famers, not just certain, the Braves team for, it's the entire set.
Right.
So I absolutely see it not making sense to grade cards because you one, space, and two, to be able to, to look through them in a binder and all that stuff. It definitely makes sense. And unless you're Mr. Moneybags, you're not going to get a PSA graded. I don't care what the grade is. The cost to do an entire set graded, I don't care what year you're talking about. It's just outrageous. So you're not going to do that.
Where would you put 700 graded cards, on some of those sets? Like,
most people would be lucky to have 700 graded cards in their entire collection.
Right.
Let alone, I'm going to build this one set all of graded cards. Now, again, there's some ballers out there who would like, I have the entire, like, okay, but they're usually dedicated that one set is their special set, and that's all they do. That's their main collecting goal, again, which is fine. But Jake, I think that's probably one of the biggest pros for collecting ungraded cards is set collectors and those that want to especially display those sets in a binder so you can look through them and not just put them in a box in a corner somewhere.
And what's ironic about it is, as far as the YouTube community goes, I'm one of the younger guys in it. I'm 32 years old, and I kind of have that old school set collecting mentality that a lot of current collectors do not have. To do it like a Alex Bowman 53, with the all graded set. He said it himself. If he tried to do it today, he's like, there's no way. The cost just doesn't make sense. Yep. And for me, going back to my original statement about, like, I see it as a museum to the collection of the game where, I've set the parameters on that. If I went the graded route, that means my museum would be much smaller because there's no way that I could do entire sets. So there's a big component to it that is cost effective. For me, I would rather have a complete, we'll use 1963 again, 1963 top set. I'd rather have the full set raw in a binder, as opposed to only having the Hall of Famers and graded. And that's not a one's better than the other kind of thing. That's just what I'd rather have.
That's your personal preference. That's what you enjoy as a collector.
There's under 180 of that. If you look at my shelves around here, they're graded Hall of Famers. And but on my end, well, I don't collect sets. I'm just not interested in getting all these cards of guys that I have no interest in. I'm not saying set collectors don't, because some people do. I know, like you said, bringing up Alex again, he's got a history on just about every card in that set. To me, I don't want to spend all my money on cards I'm never going to look at, because I know that's what I would do. But like Jake showed his binder collection. Here's my binder collection. One. But this is a very special set to me. It's the 76 Topps. So I do have one set like this, but this was the first set I ever started collecting, opening packs. And some of these cards that are in here are cards I pulled from packs. So I think I need like 30 more cards. And if you were to look closer, you'd find the cards marked up with the D on the back that I've shown in other videos, so my brother wouldn't take them. So,
and I, in fact,
exception.
You see me show off cards, all the vintage cards, I buy graded. However, I am working on a 1978 top set. Now, I'm being very selective in the grade and the look, the eye appeal of the card, but I'm buying those cards raw because I want to put together, and eventually I would like to have that in a binder. So again, I'm not 100%. I only buy graded cards either, because once I complete that 78 set, I don't know if I'm going to do another set, but I'm at the both ends there. So quick question for you, Jake, when you put these sets together in terms of, hey, you want them in a binder and so on, is there a particular grade or condition that you're looking for? Do you just want a copy? And if you can get a lot of 30 cards, hey, I can knock these 30 cards off. I don't care if they're off center, if they have ding corners, or are you looking for nicer cards? And if you are on the nicer end, we're not talking necessarily gem mint or whatever, but on the nicer end, are you worried that over time those cards may get damaged in the binders? So
that's a great question, John, because it does matter. And regardless of if you collect graded or raw, there's a certain eye appeal to each collector, right? So of course I have parameters on that. Now, as far as condition, the best way I can describe it, if I graded my cards, the majority of them will grade from a 1 to a 3. Now, the newer that you get, like if you get them in the 70s, they're nicer. There's more of them. It's easier to get nice copies. My basketball sets are pretty nice because they're dirt cheap. But the further you go back, the more lenient I am. Now, let's say 33 Gaudy, for example. It's the oldest. Well, that's not true anymore. T206 is the oldest set I collect.
You got your cousin's cards.
Yeah, I got my cousin's set. But like, I want cards that are fully whole. I don't want missing pieces. On the T206 sets, if the corners are a little rounded, there's some corner creasing on it, whatever, I'm cool. That doesn't bother me. I don't like creases across faces. I like centering. I like registration. I like color. But corners, even creases, I'm a little lenient, especially on the older stuff you get. As you get on into the 50s and 60s, I'm less lenient because they're easier to find in better condition at a cheaper price.
Well, that then again leads to, again, your, if you want to call it an argument, or for your reason for not buying graded cards is, at the level, at the greater or general condition. Okay, if a card happens to get a little ding in it while it's in the binder, or while you're transferring a card in the binder, or this or whatever, it's not like, oh my gosh, I just ruined some potential value of this card, because it's, especially the older cards in your collection. All right, there are going to have some issues that if you bump a corner, well, the corner's already rounded. How much more are you going to bump it or whatever? As opposed to maybe those that, have really nicer cards that, oh my gosh, I just happened to ding this one corner. Like my Boggs collection, I have very few. I would say like 99.5% of my collection is ungraded. And the only ones I really have graded, I have a few. I'm working sort of on a tops run of his cards graded. And occasionally, if there was an auction that I wanted the card and someone happened to have it graded and it's a low print number or whatever, okay, I bought it, but it was already graded. But I don't have any intention of taking any of those cards and getting them graded. But I occasionally do a card of the day. So I'm doing scans of my cards. So I'm taking them out of the top loader or the one touch, putting it on the scanner. And there have been a couple times where I've almost like dropped a card like serial numbered out of 5. I'm like, oh God, like don't like, not that it would, okay, if it had a ding, okay, it's still an out of 5 card. It still has some value to it, but I would just, me handling some of the cards, not other cards, are just like, yeah, okay, whatever. They're, right. I can go out and buy, a dozen of them, whatever. But there are some there that, when I go to take them out, I'm like, oh, geez, this is a pretty rare card to scan. And I got to be careful putting it in the top loader because some of the top loaders don't always fit perfect. And you go to turn it one way and they slide out. So
it's funny you say that, John, because I just pulled a card out of a top loader to show you, and it's going back to what Jake said about basketball cards being dirt cheap. So
it's a 70-71 tall boy.
But look how, look at it. It's in awesome shape. I paid $7 for this.
It's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he's all $11. I was like, and it's, the back. This thing looks like it came right out of a pack. And I totally agree with you. And I don't collect a ton of basketball, but I tried picking up a few of the Hall of Famers at that price. It's like,
looks like the biggest card in that set, 70-71, is the Pistol Pete Maravich rookie.
Okay.
You can buy one graded in a 3 or less for $300 or less.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's the biggest card in the set, like by far. It's crazy. And, but speaking to kind of what you're talking about, Johnny Boggs, the first card that I'm going to show, I think hits a lot of those points because I do like to pull out my cards out of my binders. And usually that tends to be the bigger names, for a video or to show somebody or whatever. This card I cracked out myself. First set I ever built was 1954 tops. This was a PSA 1.5. All right. So like if you saw it up closer, it's got a little bit of a rough cut, factory cut a little bit. Corners, little dinged, it's a 1.5. But it's in a penny sleeve and they're in the 8 pocket holders, for the bigger cards, 56 there and back to 52 for tops. And, I don't have any issue with it. And I'm not paranoid that, it's a 6 condition card, and oh my gosh, don't ding the corner, don't drop it, like don't breathe.
Yep.
Because that's not what I collect, and that's not the condition that it's in.
I don't know. I gotta have it like that.
No, that's not fair. I don't have one yet.
It was totally coincidence. It was sitting right here on my desk. That was planned.
Another point in your favor, Jake, and trust me, I will get to other points of why I like graded cards, but up to this point, I seem to be making your case. Is that regardless of the condition, let's say it is a 1.5. I know you had it was graded and you broke it out, but let's say you bought it ungraded and they said, hey, this is a poor or fair condition. Chances are you're going to pay a lot less for it than if it was actually graded. So again, for collectors out there, especially those that are building sets or even not set collectors, as an early way to or easy way to get into vintage, maybe a cheaper way to get into vintage, getting ungraded cards is going to be cheaper than paying for graded copies.
And there's a little bit of unknown that can play in your favor with raw cards. Meaning, a dealer set up at a show and they have a raw Hank Aaron rookie card. And you look at it and you're like, this card looks amazing. Like, I don't know, it's not graded, but wow, eye appeal is great. I love it. that dealer may look at that card like, man, even if that grades, it may be like a 1. You know, I don't think it's any better than that. That could work to your advantage.
Right.
Not always. It can work the other way where they're like, oh, I think will grade a 6, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, most of the time with a graded card, 6 is a 6, man. Comps are 6 comps. Now, there are exceptions to that. We're like, well, the IPL is really strong with this. You should pay up. You know, that's somewhat of a thing. But you guys buy graded cards more than I do and look at them more than I do.
Yeah.
I feel like dealers tend to be that way with graded cards of like, it's a 6. You're going to pay 6 price.
Yeah. I tend to agree there. If I'm looking at a card, and again, I don't attend too many shows, so it's basically my experiences are for the most part the National. If I'm at the National and I look at the price, I'm like, wow, that's above comps and stuff like that. Can you work with me or whatever? And they say, man, this is spot on centered. I mean, look at that. I mean, and so there is a premium sometimes to pay when you have that, and some of them don't go, oh, well, this is undergraded. Some of them say that, but some of them say, hey, for the grade, maybe there's some other technical issues, but the eye appeal, the centering on this is, if you want to call it, the upper end of that grade in terms of eye appeal. And more often than not, you may pay for that. Because I've seen, of course, doing the Vintage 100 Index with Mike Baseball Collector. I'm entering all this data, and I'm seeing all these price points. I'm thinking, wow, like, why did, like, in 1 month this one card sell for, and again, same grade, so much more than the other one the previous month? And I look at the images of the listings and I go, oh, okay, that 5 was way off center left to right, but the corners may have been sharp. The other one that sold for more was centered better, but maybe had a little bit of corner issues. Turned out, from a technical standpoint, both got a 5, but one sure as heck looks, at least to me, a lot nicer. And that one, sure enough, oh yeah, that one sold for more.
And there
is something to be said about that.
Like, I bought this card raw, and it's got a 2.5, and you can't really tell on it, but it's got some pretty good wear. This is also a 2.5, and it doesn't have nearly the wear of this one. And to be honest, guys, for me, if you ask me what's your grade on this card, I would have no idea. I honestly, even though I want them graded, I a lot of people say this, but I do look at the card. Here's another example. Here's a 3. This thing looks beautiful. I don't need 6s or 7s. I have some, but it's going back to what Jake was saying, where they say, well, it's a 6, it's this price. That's where you got to be smarter and care more about the card than a little piece of paper up here. With that,
Now,
you can find great cards at a better price.
Yep. While I think I'm getting better just because of the different selection of the grades of cards that I've bought. So I have a decent number of 6s, some 5s, and 4s. So I can, just from my own collection now, I can look and sort of compare the different grades. But early on, when I bought a bunch of vintage cards, when I got my 52 Bowman Mantle, my 53 Topps Mantle, some of the other cards that are now in BVG holders, I bought them all raw from my local card shop. And the intention was I wanted to get them graded. So when I decided to buy them, I was like, okay, I think, because I remember I printed out the grading standards from PSA of like, okay, well, 5 would have these features or these things could be wrong with it, still get a 5, and so on. So I was trying to learn. And I guess you could say overall I didn't do bad, because there were about, I don't know, maybe like 15 cards. It was like even. On about a third of them, I thought they would grade higher. So I was off by maybe 1 or 1.5 grades. For another third, and almost exactly a third, I was right on. And then a third, I was surprised. I thought they were going to grade lower, and they graded like a grade or a grade and a half higher. So overall, when you look at, I probably evened out, okay, because the third and third and third. But back then we're talking about, I bet you that was at least 8+ years ago. And I think I've gotten better now. But one of the things for me, and I finally will get into maybe some of my pros, is that, if you're shopping for cards online, I don't go to many shows. Okay. So I can't look at the card. I can't see, okay, hey, I like the overall look to it. I don't see many creases and things like that. Sellers, because I've seen listings and they'll say, oh, well, this is excellent mint or excellent plus or near mint or VG plus or this or whatever. And depending on the quality of the photo, you're like, okay, well, are there some creases that I don't see? They don't necessarily in their listings, not all of them, I'm sure, point out all the faults in a card because they're trying to obviously get as much money as they can for a card. But I don't know. I just think it's hard for me as mainly buying online to be able to look at, because again, I'm going after the 78 set. So every once in a while I look up some 78s. And again, depending on the quality of the image, I want a very well-centered, nice, sharp corners. I want a card that if I were to send it in would at least get a 7 minimum. So I'm looking for nice copies. I've passed on so many cards online of ones I needed because I can't quite tell, is that corner rounded a little bit, or is it, and I'm just like, I don't want to buy it and look at it and go, no, that's not the quality. Now that's just special for me for the 78s. I want those. If I was just trying to build a 78 and I didn't really care, oh yeah, sure. If the condition wasn't an issue for me, yeah, I could go online and buy 78s and complete that set. I would have had that done a long time ago. But for me, I think having a card graded, one, it gives me a better sense of the going value of that card. I know the condition. I know that generally speaking in a 4, I love PSA 4s because they're on the low end scale of the price. And usually once you move from a 3 to a 4, generally speaking, you get rid of crease issues. There may be a faint crease, but 3s, you have a chance of still having some sort of crease in it and still get a 3. 4s, at least so far that I've purchased, tend to be freely, crease free. There's corner issues, of course. That's the main thing. So that's one of the reasons why I like buying graded cards.
John, I think there's two type of graded card collectors or buyers. There's the people that will only buy cards that are slabbed. And then there's the collectors, which I think I fall into. I will buy raw cards with the intentions of getting them slabbed, but I factor in what it would cost to get them slabbed with the price I'm going to buy to see if it's still cheaper. Like I just got up and I have the 1950 Bowman set Hall of Famers done, but I've got not going to happen. But but I found nicer copies raw at a better price, and most of these I got either at Strongsville or the National, so I got to see them in person over a couple of years, and I like SGC, and so plus they're cheaper, and I don't have to wait forever.
Now,
but I have no problem buying raw cards to get graded later on because I don't care about the grades. I really don't.
Right.
I'd be shocked if anything here gets higher than a 3. I just like them to be graded, and I want them slabbed. So I don't have an issue. Plus, they're 1950 Bowman. It goes back to what Jake was saying. Your expectations go down a little bit the further you go back. I'm not expecting 7s or 8s on these cards.
But you said you factored in what you were willing to pay with the cost of grading. Now, I'm assuming you're sending those in SGC.
Right. Now,
so that's a flat.
So it's a flat like, card, and it's going to cost me more to get it graded than a graded one. I'm going to go buy the graded one.
Okay, but
I can't find a nice copy of it.
But okay, so but you also had to figure not only, hey, I like the overall eye appeal, and you say I don't really care what the ultimate grade is, which is fine. And again, I don't. If I have a card that I like and it's a 3 versus a 5, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay. But you're also saying that, okay, I'm willing to pay a certain price for an ungraded card because I can get it cheaper factoring in the cost of grading than I can getting a card that you think is the same grade, purchasing it graded. So you do have to have that other thought process of not just I like the card,
Right.
but you also have to figure in, okay, I think this would grade a 3. So 3s go for $100.
Right.
Right. So I can pick this up for $50, and with $25 for grading, I can buy it cheaper than the $100 3 or whatever. But you have to factor that in. And if you're wrong and it comes back, it's so now.
And maybe I'll lose out on one or two of them. So be it.
Yeah.
You know, that might happen. But
Yep.
I think
No, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's another thought process that you have to go through. And maybe, again, if you do that for multiple times, yeah, you'll hit some winners, you have some losers, or what if you want to call them losers or whatever. It may even out over time. But it's another thing you have to think about when you're buying ungraded, if the goal is to grade it.
like, you know, I bought this raw and got it graded. I couldn't afford it in a 2 at the time if that was graded.
Well, see, and I look at Don's stack of, 6-ish cards there, raw, and instead of grading them $15 a pop, that's $90. I can buy another $90 card. That's the way my mind works.
Yep.
Granted, I don't do graded. It's different when a large portion of your collection already is. You want them uniform. I get that. But let me get philosophical on you guys for a second. So I think that the majority of the middle ground of people that collect graded cards. So I'm not talking about the guys that are going after the 9s and the 10s and the 8s and everything in vintage. Okay. I'm not talking about that segment of people. The main middle ground people that collect graded cards. And I'm not going to say everybody, but I think the majority buy graded cards and say, I buy the card, not the grade, that they are lying or they're lying to themselves. And the reason I say that is because I think they've convinced themselves that they need to be more reliant on someone else than themselves. Now, I'm going to branch out from there a little bit, meaning that in Don's case, what he's talking about, I really think Don doesn't care. Okay, I know Don pretty well. I think that that's true. I think a lot of people, that is not true. They're buying the card in a certain condition because maybe they're not blessed like I am to where I have a lot of regional shows. I get to travel to shows. I have online dealers that I'm friends with that I really know and trust. If they say it's a certain condition and I can see it with my eyes, I'm good. Like, I have no doubt about that. So, maybe there's an element there to they're not blessed that they have to buy mostly online. Okay, that could be true. But for the guys that go to a show and say, I buy the card, not the grade, but they'll buy the one in the case sitting right next to each other. I'm going to buy that 3 that's already graded and not this one that's sitting over here that's in similar condition. It looks good. You like it. And this one's cheaper and this one's not. Because this one's in a slab, you're going to buy it. Buying the card and not the grade, that's a lie for many people. Because
I have to go back, though. I had my 76 Topps Hall of Fame run.
Yeah.
I don't know why I did this, and I would never do it again. But they're all in new SGC labels. They're all 7s and higher. Looking back on it, I'm like, well, why did I do that? But now, so I have Jim Cott. I need to get it graded. I got to keep it that way because it's just the rest of that way. But none of my other sets are like that. You look at them. I've got PSA. I've got SGC mixed. I just wanted the cards. I've got a few CSGs. But for some stupid reason, I did that. And it makes no sense. Like, looking back on it, I'm like, I would never do that again. Like, so that's one case where it's the label. And it's like, it's dumb, in my opinion.
And just to finish my thought, people being reliant on someone else's eyes as opposed to theirs. Now, granted, there's a place for it. I'm not totally bad-mouthing it. If you're a new collector and you don't know what you're looking at, and you're new to vintage especially, you're not sure if it's real, counterfeit, you're buying online, you don't know anybody in the hobby, there's absolutely a place for it. I'm not saying that it's totally irrelevant, but I think that as you grow as a collector and as you mature and you can be more reliant on your own eyes, why would you not save yourself money and add more things to your collection? To me, like, again, I view it a little different. It's almost like buying supplies. Who wants to buy supplies? Would you rather spend money on supplies or more stuff for your collection?
Right.
Would you rather spend money on grading fees or more stuff for your collection?
Yep.
But I own this.
I told you he did.
And it's still graded. Okay. I've been
Crack
collecting.
it. Come on. Let's see you crack it right here.
Not this one. I'm not building this set. I'm not building the set. But I mean, I've been collecting for 23 plus years, largely in vintage. Okay. This is a card. I don't trust myself to know a raw copy if it's real or not.
Yeah,
I agree on that one.
That makes sense because there's so many fakes out there.
That's why this card is still in this holder.
Yep.
And I'm not doing the set. Okay. But is that as relevant on a 1958 Topps Whitey Ford that you're buying in low grade? No. So again, there's nothing wrong with having likes or dislikes, but I think people are more reliant on it than they really want to admit to themselves.
Here's two cards I don't think I'd grade. I don't know if it'd be worth it. But
Ooh. Those are pretty good ones.
I know.
Now, Jake, I have to admit that when I've gone like to the National, I'll look just as curiosity, but I'll generally bypass tables that don't have any grade, that they're all ungraded. And so I admit I go to the graded copies and don't look to buy the ungraded cards. And again, I have it in the past through my local card shop. And again, overall, I didn't do too bad in estimating what I should pay for it, knowing that I was going to have them graded. So I do fall into that category of, I am a label person. But when I guess, so maybe when I say I buy the card, not the grade, if I have a choice between buying a PSA 4 that has nice eye appeal versus a PSA 5 that doesn't have as much nice eye appeal, I'm going with the better looking card, even though it's a grade lower, because there's other issues with it. So I don't say, hey, when I'm interested in buying a card, I don't say, with a few exceptions of say my 78 set or Hall of Famers I was going after, with few exceptions, especially once you get into the 60s and 50s and so on. I don't go into, I want to buy a 1948 Bowman Warren Spawn that I picked up at the National. I didn't say I want it or I need it in a PSA 4. I think my copy was a PSA 3. I didn't care what I looked at it, I liked it, and it happened to be a 3. I'm like, dude, I can save some money by not trying to get a nicer looking copy that may not be as nice as what I think this 3 looks at.
Well, you
So
bought
that's
that,
my mindset of saying I buy the card, not the grade. But I see your point of, well, why don't I take it a step further and then just even save more money and find a nice looking ungraded card? And even if I want to get it graded, then I still may make out better.
Well, John, you bought that Spawn at the Pittsburgh show. I think it was a 49 Bowman.
That was a 49, yeah.
And that had some blemish or something on it. And you were between that and another card.
The 64 Aaron.
Which was much nicer than that card. But I remember saying to you, because I didn't want to give my opinion. I was like, but you were like, no, I really want to hear it. And I just thought the Spawn was such a nicer card, even though it had the blemish or whatever. It had something wrong with it.
The background has a little, it's like a darker red than the rest of the red, or I don't know what caused it.
But I remember saying to you, I said, I think you're going to be, this is a better memory of a card to have from this show.
I have a question for you, John. I think this will be interesting based on what your take is. Mm-hmm. Do you think that since you joined YouTube, you started consuming content as well as making your own, did you used to be more strictly, I'm buying this grade because it's this grade, and you've moved a little bit towards the eye appeal pendulum? Or do you think you've always been, no, I care about the eye appeal first and foremost? Do you think that needle has moved at all because of YouTube?
That's a very good question. It's sort of hard for me to answer only because up until me joining YouTube, for the most part, I was just a Wade Boggs collector, and so everything was ungraded. Now, I did have those cards, those vintage cards that I bought at the local card shop and had graded. When I did buy those, I did have a sense of eye appeal. Although, if you look at my 1957 Topps Frank Robinson rookie that got a PSA 5, it's off center, left to right. Today, I would not have bought that card. So, but I bought that even, I've had that for like 15, probably around 15 years and bought it ungraded and had it graded because at the time I thought I was going to try to sell it. I wanted to sell some cards, and that one just never ended up, thank goodness, selling. So it's hard for me to say that, okay, well, once I got on YouTube, I became more of a discerning collector of more eye appeal than grade. And before I was grade. I do say, though, very initially, when I decided, hey, I want to start collecting the Hall of Famers of from each set, is collect the Hall of Famers. My initial intention was to get quote unquote collector grade copies. So if it was from the 70s, I wanted to try to get it a 7. In the 60s, I wanted to get it a 6. Well, after a couple months and again, when I started this was 2000 into 2001, right?
Yeah.
So I started saying, okay, 1973 Thurman Munson in a 7 is how much? Is like wait, what? Well, and then I was like, well, maybe I'll do just like one grade below collector grade. And then I was like, no, I just, and it wasn't necessarily in any YouTuber influence. Like, I watched this channel and oh, they're doing it this way and so on. It was me from a budget standpoint of, I can't, with the limited budget, it's going to take me so long. And I want to build my collection. I don't want to have a small collection of really nice cards. I want to have a fairly big collection of overall nice looking cards. So I quickly shifted to, it's not so much the number on it, is what can I afford, or what can I am willing to pay for a card. And if it happens to be a 4 or 5, I don't care. So like that Warren Spahn I picked up at the National. I didn't care that it was a 3. John Mangini, I think he picked up a 4, and he showed, hey, great looking card. I think mine was maybe a little bit better centered, but had some more corner issues.
Take that, John.
His is a nice card, but he paid for more for his 4 than I did for my 3. So I'm like, I think I did I did good for myself.
Don, same question that I originally asked John.
Yeah, for me, absolutely it did. I used to do searches, and I would put the grade in the search, and it was PSA only. So let's say I would say, a 1973 Clemente PSA 7. And that's how I would search. Now I would just put 1973 Clemente. Now I may do a PSA search and then an SGC search and see what it is. But yeah, I was all about the grade. And my older cards have way better grades. Now, granted, they were cheaper then, but I don't necessarily think they're nicer. I mean, some are obviously, but and here's a case in point. So I had 2 copies of this card. I had a 4 and a 5. And
Yastrzemski.
I don't know if you can tell. There's a bunch of weight showing down here.
Okay, wait a minute. I'll get the solo layout on you there. There you go.
I don't know if we can see the white.
Yep.
So the other one had none of that. It was a 5, and it was clean, but it looked like the ink wasn't as strong. It was kind of faded. Mm-hmm. And I said to my wife even, and I said, and she knows nothing about cards. I said, which card do you like better? She said the 4. I said, so do I. And so I sold the 5 and kept the 4. And I did that with the 54 Mays. I had a 3 and a 4. Now, granted, in that case, the 4 was much nicer, but the 3 was nice enough for my collection. and I could get a lot more money for the 4 than selling the 3.
Yep.
So in that case, I sold that one. But that's rare. I rarely have doubles, but I just did on those 2.
And the reason I ask you guys that question is because I think that for the YouTube community as a whole, for the guys that have been around for a while, consuming content of people a lot smarter than me that are out there that have been collecting a lot longer than me, by osmosis, we hear the things of collect what you like, buy the card, not the grade.
Right.
You know, all of those things that steer us away from when we're in our silos. Like I think about Double D Vintage on this topic, how he's like, yeah, before I was on YouTube, bro, that he'd be like, before I was on YouTube, you know, I just buy the 7, you know, I'd buy the 8, whatever. But like he's going through this process of, no, I want to get the nicer eye appeal center stuff that I really like. That's a lower technical grade, but that's what I like.
Yeah.
Where I think we as YouTubers, content creators, consumers, we're better informed and more lenient on ourselves in a way that we're not siloed to thinking what the companies, I'm going conspiracy theory, what the companies like PSA want us to think of. No, you got to have the 6, you got to have the 7, you got to do the registry, you got to get something better. Like,
Yeah.
You know, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
And
I completed a couple registry sets, but I don't care where I rank. I'm not looking to rank high. I just use it as a checklist.
Yeah.
I've said this to Drew, and because Drew has a lot of display cases like this, when I have them in there, I no longer am looking at the grades. I'm just looking at the card because it's a whole. You know, it's where if I was sitting there like this, it's like, oh, okay, that's a 3, that's a 2.5. You know, it's and when you're far away enough, you don't see any of the imperfections, anyways. In the cards.
Hey, before I get to one point that I want to make for why I buy graded vintage, let's get to a trivia question and maybe a second one after that, because I think you may get the first one here because we're running about 15 or so minutes left here. So.
Jake, we better get this.
All right, I think you will. All right, in September 1952. Which St. Louis Cardinal made his pitching debut in his 12th season already with the Cardinals?
His pitching debut, 12th season with the Cardinals. So we've been around since 1940.
Is it this guy?
So, Don, you think it's Stan Musial?
I'm guessing maybe he was a pitcher originally. I'm thinking maybe he pitched 1 game or 1 inning.
What do you think, Jake?
Don, I think you're onto something there.
Like I don't think it was a Rick Ankiel deal where he went from.
Yeah, and like, why would he have not have pitched already if he'd been there 12 years?
In the major leagues, he wasn't in the minor league system for 12 years, correct?
It just says 12th season already with the Cardinals. So
already with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think he was quite this far back for his rookie. I think it was a little later. I'll just say Enos Slaughter, just for the sake of a different player.
Okay. Don is right. It was.
I was thinking Musial, yeah.
So here's the background. So Musial had just clinched his 6th batting title crown for the Cardinals in 1952. The player that he battled for the crown throughout the season was Frank Baumholtz of the Cubs. I'd never heard of him. Musial didn't appreciate comments that Baumholtz had made through the season. So Stan went to manager Eddie Stanky and told him that he wanted to pitch against the Cubs and Baumholtz. So on September 28th, in the final game of the season, Musial made his pitching debut. Harvey Haddix started the game and pitched to 1 batter. Then Musial pitched against Baumholtz. Baumholtz got to first base on a ground ball error by Cardinal third baseman Solly Hemus, Hemus. Hemus. Haddix then took over again after Musial pitched to Baumholtz. The Cubs won the game 3-0, and that was it for Musial's pitching career.
Where did they move Harvey Haddix in the field to come back?
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, when I heard that, I immediately thought Is that still is that allowed today? Can you if you stay on the field,
Yeah,
can you
I think
keep
so.
switching positions as
If you
long
don't-
as you're not taken
yeah,
out
you-
of the game? You can't come back in. But can you?
I think so.
Okay, I wasn't sure because maybe back then they allowed that you could switch, but I think since Haddock's sounds like he wasn't replaced.
Yeah.
And then you can't come back
Because
in.
then he wouldn't come back in. Yeah.
But yeah, so he
That's
wanted
cool. I
Stan
never
wanted
knew
to get revenge on good old Frank Baumholtz.
He was a pitcher originally, and he wasn't a very good one.
Well, I think the real question is how long did Musial stay mad at Salihimas?
I thought you were going to say he beamed him. That's why he wanted to get in, but that doesn't sound like Stan that he did something like that. But
yeah,
we should have struck him out. That would have been awesome.
I know.
When I saw that, I'm like, that's an interesting trivia question because obviously there have been position players.
Oh, said something about Musial. That's right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
I
Boggs pitched a couple times. So here's the other very, very quickly, and then we'll get back to topic here. Here was the backup because I thought, now Don, you did get it right, but I thought maybe Cardinals 1952
was a guess.
You would have gotten it right away. But here's the second one. Which major league pitcher threw the most strikeouts in the 1950s? Major league pitcher, most strikeouts in the 1950s.
So Spahn was a rookie before that. So was Feller. They both missed because of military time, but especially Feller had a lot of strikeouts while he was in the majors. But I'm betting it's not either one of them.
Or something like that. Like he didn't play through the 50s. Feller.
Feller played through 56. You're right.
Yeah, so that was my original thought, but I'm thinking he lost 3 years there.
It's probably going to be somebody that didn't miss for military time that we wouldn't guess, Don.
Yeah. Thinking I'm going to go with Whitey Ford.
He did miss, but not much.
His rookie was 51, so
right.
I'll bet you it's not a Hall of Famer.
It is a Hall of Famer. I'll give you that.
Okay.
It is a Hall of Famer.
I'm going to switch to maybe Don Newcomb, but okay. I'm going to stay with that.
Who? Whitey Ford?
Whitey Ford.
Okay. Jake, you have a thought?
I don't think it's Spahn, but I'm going to stick with him.
That was one of my thoughts, Jake.
All right. I was able to stump both of you. Early Wynn.
Oh!
Wynn threw 1,544 strikeouts in the decade. He pitched from 1939 to 1963 with a number of teams. Early won the Major League Cy Young Award in 1959 when only one pitcher in all of baseball would receive the award. His season high was 184 with the Cleveland Indians in 1957. Wynn retired with 2,334 strikeouts after 23 seasons, and he was inducted into the Hall in 1972.
Does that list who was second and third?
It doesn't say.
Okay.
Nope. No, it didn't say who was. Yes, some of my trivia questions did have, who finished second, third, and stuff. But I don't know who was behind.
Very
Wynn,
cool.
But
two good questions.
Good questions.
Yeah, thanks. All right, now to my sort of final point, I had some others, but they sort of blended in with some of the discussions that we had, and it's not the reason why I collect or how I collect, but at some point in time, my son is going to inherit this entire mess. I like to call it my collection. He's going to look at it as a room full of, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? And he is going to have an easier time. The Boggs stuff, you put in the lots, you do this, they may take care of themselves because it's serial number to this or whatever, and it's an autograph, and blah, blah, blah. And he should be fine just putting something up on eBay. But he's going to have a heck of a time. He could just throw stuff out there, and it's graded, and there's a range that he knows that he's going to get decent value, rather than him trying to figure out grades or going to someone or trying to say, hey, I want to sell this whole collection. And like, well, I'd only give you this for that because it's all ungraded and I have to get them graded and, that whole negotiation stuff. So again, I don't collect to give it to that's not my goal is to see how big of a collection I can give my son. But at the end of the day, that is one side benefit, I guess. Maybe not a primary benefit to me, but a side benefit is that when I'm gone and he gets my collection, because chances are he may want to keep a couple special cards to remind him of me, or who knows. Chances are he's going to want to sell the stuff. And he's going to be better off with, at least on the vintage side, stuff that's graded than if he had a bunch of ungraded cards. So again, maybe not a primary reason, but something to consider.
I have thoughts on that.
Okay.
I think I know where this is going, but we'll see.
So I hope that Luca inherits my collection someday. I hope that he takes an interest in it and he doesn't instantly sell it all. Okay. But whether he ends up knowing collectibles or he doesn't, if my collection was raw or if it was graded, at the same point, he may or may not know what he's looking at. Whether he lists it online, whether he takes it to a shop, he may not know still. I don't think me grading my cards would make a difference. I think that we are blessed because of the community that we have, that we are more likely to have a connection within the hobby that each of us can trust and say, hey, if something happens to me and Luca wants to sell, hey, call John, don't call Don. Okay.
Thanks.
But in all seriousness,
that is true.
A trained eye that we may have, be able to do that other collectors don't, that don't have connections. But I would rather Luca call one of you guys or Drew and say, hey, yeah, I'll come help you out. Like, your dad trusted me. I'm going to do the right thing. If you want to sell, I'll help you do that and get the best value you can, as opposed to Luca going, I don't know what this is. I don't know what graded means, whether it's raw, graded or not, and he could still get ripped off.
Right.
I plan on outliving everyone in the community. I'm going to be like over 100. So
you're our guy. Is what you're saying.
So all my YouTube connections and stuff like that, I'm not going to have anyone to call. So
that's when Luke gets on. But that's a good point. I thought of that, Drew or Jake, and I really should ask a few guys first of all, like, hey, would you be willing to do this? And then give my wife the name and phone numbers. Because we're all saying, 30 years down the line, but it could be tomorrow. Yep. And, she knows of some of you guys, but she wouldn't know how to contact you, or I don't know if you get on YouTube and figure it out. And that's a really smart thing, Jake. That's something I think I need to look into.
My wife knows the members of the Boggs Trust,
right? And
she can reach out to any of them for the Boggs cards. And I think she has, through my contacts and stuff, I think Mike Baseball Collector's contact information. So obviously he'd steer her in the right direction and stuff. And Jake, that is a good point.
Yeah, that could come over, like Mike lives in Texas. That's a haul to come up to Pennsylvania.
Right. But through Mike, it could be lead to you, Don, and it's that type of network and community.
I totally get the sentiment of wanting to leave it for the next person, whether it's a family member or whatever, the best that you can and not leave them overwhelmed or not know what they're looking at. Like, I get the sentiment. But if I'm able to, I would rather put it in the hands of somebody I trust and that I know knows what they're looking at. And will do the best that they can.
I have 3 children, and they're all old enough that I know that they're not interested in this. My 2 girls and my son. Mm-hmm. So that would eliminate the maybe potential fighting between 3 of them. I would hope they don't do that, but saying, oh, you got his best cards and you got this and I only got this, where someone I trust can come in and say, it was all worth $1,000, split it 3 ways, and that is a good idea. It's about time you had one, Jake.
Thanks, man. I'm glad I did something good on here.
Talking about
Jake, that you were getting. I heard you and Drew saying once, like, we're like, well, they can see it's a 1964 stand up, and Drew was like, well, I label them, you can read it, but like I've seen your spreadsheets. I'm lazy. I'm never gonna do that. It's just,
Most people are not psychopaths like me, where like
right.
I could make the argument like I'm relying on myself, and my spreadsheets are ridiculously detailed. I know what I've spent on every card. I know what each one of them are worth. It has all kinds of formulas in it that'll tell you how much I spent on my whole collection, how much it's worth at this point, when I last updated it, which ones I have, which ones I need.
And go, oh my gosh.
Like, yeah.
I'm behind, but I have an extensive catalog of my Boggs cards, most of which I know what I paid for, when I paid for it. I'm a little bit behind on doing that for my vintage. I have some work to do with that, but for a lot of my collection, I have in a database spreadsheet with lots of the details.
And it's there, and I have it, and I love it. But like, as far as like Luca inheriting that, it's only going to matter if he wants to be a collector. And then he's going to be like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, it's already here. It's done. Like, I just keep filling it in.
Yeah.
If he's not, it's useless.
Yep.
Because he don't want to go through that. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
I would rather a guy like one of you guys or Drew or somebody like that, that I trust, come and say, here, this is what you got. I know what I'm looking at. Let me help you.
Yeah. My son's 22. I only have one child. And so right now he's concentrating on graduating college, finding a job, and, maybe once he's settled down, has a family and things like that, then because he appreciates my cards, because, when he's home for break or for the summer and stuff, and I'll get a card, I'm like, hey, Colin, look at the card I picked up. He goes, wow, that it's a cool card. And he did when he was younger. He has his a couple boxes of cards that he bought. He was a fan at the time of A-Rod, and he has some Yankees greats, some memorabilia, bat jersey cards and stuff that I got him. And so at one time he was interested, but then school and all that stuff happened, life happened, and he may come back. He may, as he gets older and I get older, and depending on where he is in the world working and stuff, if he has that opportunity as I'm older and older to appreciate what I have, he may say, hey, you know what, I want to continue this, or I have some interest, or maybe not all of it, maybe some of it. Maybe it's a combination. Hey, I'm not interested in this, but I'd really like to maybe build upon my dad's collection of this or something.
Right. Well, for you guys too, Jake, you've got the baseball autograph collection as well as the cards, and John, you have the memorabilia. Although your trust, Boggs Trust, kind of knows all that stuff.
Yep.
But for you might have a bunch of a couple of YouTubers for your cards, but then you might have like Bill from the Hall of Fame collector. I forget the guy's name in Michigan that does autographs. Frank.
Yeah.
To rely on them for the other part of your collection, because I'd know your cards, but I wouldn't know the value of your baseballs, or if they're legit. I mean, I know they are, but just that would be nice to have a network of guys for each niche if you have that.
One and two, I guess, to like hit on the raw graded component of it again, of like there could be somebody sitting out there, if they're still watching us at this point,
of course,
saying,
yeah,
but if I grade all my stuff for XYZ family member that gets it next, it'll be worth more. That could be true. You might be able to get more money for it. Now, where I'm at right now, my son's 2. I'm hopefully optimistic that I'm handing over a collection to a collector. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't care about the value increasing. I want to hand him a great collection.
Yep.
For John, maybe that's different.
Yeah. Even if you did care about the value, you have so much now that it wouldn't be cost effective to grade that much.
Unless
a mantle or a few cards.
Yeah. No.
But it wouldn't make sense. But totally agree with you on the collector part.
Because if Luca was older and he had zero interest, then I'm handing over part of his inheritance. Please don't let that happen. But maybe that's different perspective of another reason for you to want stuff graded.
Yeah. I mean, I would, let's just say if my son is not interested in keeping my collection or expanding upon my collection, I would, of course, I'd be gone by then, but I would feel so great knowing that if he was able to get more for my cards,
Sure.
graded than ungraded, even within the network of the the YouTube community helping him out and stuff. Um, if that money could help him buy a house or do something special for him, and the more that I can give him, and again, that's not why I collect. I mean, I'm not. I didn't buy
Right.
this card here and go, wow, I
Right.
can't wait till I'm gone and Colin gets this
Man,
card.
cash
right?
in, big
I mean,
guy. You're welcome.
This is my card. Okay. This is for me right now and
Right.
my enjoyment. But again, if it would make me feel good knowing that he could get the maximum amount for my collection, that it could do something really nice for him and hopefully his family. Again, just to make his life a little bit easier, that would give me gratification knowing that, hey, I did all this. I enjoyed this hobby. I enjoyed this collection, and it helped someone else out. Yep. So didn't really mean to end this debate on talking about death and passing and stuff, but hey, it's part of the discussion of
Right. Absolutely.
graded versus ungraded. And I think, and I
to
knew
y'all's,
this,
to y'all's point, I mean, I think that's one of the main reasons a lot of people say they do graded stuff. When I leave it to whoever, I want them to know what it is and it'd be easier for them. That's a big reason for a lot of people.
Yep. Yep. But I think, and I knew going into this, that neither of us were going to be my way or the highway. This is the way you need to go. You guys are stupid. You're fools. You're idiots and all this stuff. I don't know why you're thinking that. I think in general, we understand there's pros and cons. Some make really good sense to not grade cards. There's some other things that, hey, if that's your mindset, then maybe it makes sense to collect graded cards. And so hopefully, again, all of you who started watching are still with us. Hopefully it maybe not changed your mind one way or another. I don't think we changed Jake's mind. Jake, I don't think changed our minds in some of our directions.
I wasn't the point.
Don's going to leave those 50 Bowmans ungraded.
That's right here.
But hopefully it gives you, as the audience watching this, some things to think about. Whether you're just starting off, whether you're already in between, and maybe say, hey, you know what? Jake made some good points. Maybe I won't get as many graded cards, and maybe I'll focus on getting some ungraded. Or, hey, you know what? What Don said about this was, yeah, maybe I'll start doing this. So hopefully, I think it was very entertaining. Jake, thank you for coming on. This was a great episode. I love the discussion. And again, to all of you who stuck around for about an hour and 10 minutes, we really appreciate it. Don, you're on the hook next time for our guest. You have to step it up. Again, YouTube Sports Card Hall of Famer and commissioner. And Jake, we're probably, a few months away, January, February?
January. Yeah, it'll be here before we know it, man.
I know. I just
always fun.
My gosh, Christmas is going to be here like that.
Yep. Yeah. So looking forward, Jake, to your announcement at the beginning of the year of the ballots being open and all that stuff. And yeah, looking forward to the next episode, whoever we have as a guest. So Don, you have to put your thinking caps on. And with that, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.